Okay, I'm going to explain these things. There's dedicated servers and then there's peer-to-peer. I'm going to explain peer-to-peer to the best of my abilities while playing Call of Duty at a horrendous 30 frames a second. But then again, I'll be like console version, so I shouldn't need to worry. Now, let me just sort out my video here. So just gonna set those to that. I am aware that the video has restarted, but what I'm about to say is that when it comes to peer-to-peer, it's usually connected directly. So it's from one person's PC to the other, rather than, say, to a server. Now, peer-to-peer is one of the ways to basically play online, but it's not the most efficient. It requires one player as a host to play the game, and let's face it, if your host has a terrible connection, host migration is definitely going to be a problem. But I will try to explain to you what peer-to-peer does and the ins and outs and the good and the bads while playing this game. Because this game does have peer-to-peer connection. Not good at team deathmatch, but you know. So you're about to see some horrendous gameplay, but as it stands, peer-to-peer is not bad, nor is it good. Peer-to-peer allows you to cut down, it allows game developers to cut down on the cost of essentially renting out or owning dedicated servers for multiple players to connect to. But in turn, this is bad, because dedicated servers decrease the amount of lag that you will get from a certain game, which is good, because all this depends on the type of essentially the type of internet connection the player has when it comes to peer-to-peer. If they have terrible connection, then you're going to suffer a lot of host migration and a lot of lag and ghosting. The basic one of this, I'm going to mute the entire thing. Okay, so now I can actually hear myself more clearly. One game that used it to not quite to its advantage was Dark Souls. That had a lot of problems with its PvP because it wasn't like a dedicated server for us to use. It was more or less peer-to-peer, but that was fine because it was just two people connecting together. When it's a large scale like Call of Duty, bad things can happen. But since I'm playing this on PC, I'm connected directly to the internet, so I have no problem with this. But peer-to-peer is essentially, to the heart of it, two people connecting together directly. But since Call of Duty is one of these games that has a massive player base and requires peer-to-peer to cut down on the cost, because it would cost too much to invest in servers. But the ins and outs of peer-to-peer, it basically sets one of the player as a host, but without the host options. And if that player backs out or lags out, then the entire lobby will suffer from host migration, and the game will have to discover a new host based on each of the players. Sorry, I'm slow to take today. Players' ability to connect. So basically, a good internet connection would be required. When with a dedicated server, you wouldn't suffer from that at all. I will show some gameplay of Counter-Strike Source on an official server, or a fan-run server, because fans can run a server as well. I mean, PC Card does have like dedicated servers. Well, not dedicated servers, but fan-run servers that players can access as long as they have. As long as you have the server browser enabled. When with console versions, which console games have a lot of peer-to-peer services for games, and the peer-to-peer on console isn't as bad. Is bad. Well, worse than worse than PC. Because some people wouldn't be connected directly to the internet via Ethernet cable. Some of them would be connected wirelessly, therefore experiencing more lag. I mean, a good type there, a person's connection was on a 1 bar. That means that the person is furthest away from the host. That's something else. Depending on peer-to-peer, it depends on how far you live from the person. If you live very far from the person, you're going to have difficulty connecting. But if you're close to the person, you'll experience less ping, or latency as it's called. So it all depends on the distance you live from the person. So say, like, if I was playing Call of Duty, I live in Britain, which is in the EU. I would experience lots of lag fighting or playing against a person all the way that lives in Japan, Russia, America. Further they get, the worse the connection's going to be. But since this has to select one person, shows that, well, there's going to be a lot of latency in that server. That's kind of the ins and outs. Game developers prefer to use this peer-to-peer because it cuts down on the cost of needing servers. In Dark Souls 2, I believe it's ran by servers, but I've seen many arguments that say that that the matchmaking works off of the server, but then the actual fights and the matches take place on a peer-to-peer connection, which makes no sense. But also, peer-to-peer and dedicated servers also rely on network coding, and if the network coding is bad, you're going to suffer a lot of lag. So it depends on if the game developer is actually good enough at doing it. I'm not sure how you set up a peer-to-peer connection, but really I think it's all the game does it itself. I mean, like Payday 2, you can host a game yourself because it's a peer-to-peer connection based thing. While with a dedicated server it is not. But that's really all I have to say about peer-to-peer connection. I will explain dedicated servers in Counter-Strike in the next video. See you next time.